Hey everybody, welcome to Losing Your Mind with Chris Cosentino. I'm your host, Chris Cosentino. We are here to talk about people that inspire, and all my guests are inspiring in so many different ways. And I'm really looking forward to digging deep into how they got to where they are, to the top of their game, how hard they've worked, how much they've given up, and how they're giving back. So without further ado, here's our next guest. Hey everybody, welcome to Losing Your Mind with Chris Cosentino, and I am here today with Ed Lee. Ed and I have known each other for, many years. It's kind of scary. And Too many great stories of past, which maybe we'll get into. But I'm really excited to have Ed with us today. You know, he's got two great books out. We've got the first. I have it. I think you even drew a picture in here for me. I probably shouldn't show it. And then the second book here, which both are phenomenal. This was an incredible read.
Thank you.
Journeys, Ed's story and history. And the recipes in here are slamming. Yes, I've stolen a few. And then also on top of it all, Ed has a great program going on. It's called the Lee Initiative. So welcome, Ed. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. And
thank you, man. Thank you for having me. My only trepidation is that I'm going to giggle through this whole podcast because I can't be with you and not laugh.
I think that's why we wanted to do TV together, because it would be beyond too much fun.
Yes.
But I think that was their concern too, that they would waste too much tape.
Yeah.
Of us. They'd be like, oh shit, there goes 4 rolls on the floor.
There's just too many inside jokes.
Oh man.
Anyway.
Super fun. So, and I want to start off with, your background is very, very special. For a lot of people who don't know, you can see Ed's story on Mind of a Chef. He's competed on Top Chef. He's judged on Top Chef. I'm missing something in there, I'm sure. But
that's all that matters. There's nothing else. So, and you can't see Mind of a Chef anymore because it's not on any platform anymore.
Really? That was a great episode.
No, they got kicked off Netflix, and now they're in this no man's land where I guess you can, I don't know, you can't even Google it.
Well, also you did that great documentary on fermentation.
Yes.
That's where
which no one saw because it was on Apple TV. And
that is a great documentary for those of you who want to understand about fermentation. It includes everything. Anything that you can think is fermented or you may not think is fermented has some form of fermentation. And that's
like I'll send you a jar of kimchi if you can actually find it online, because I can't.
You can't? That's such a bummer. That's
I don't know.
That was the last time we got in trouble together, when we threw tortillas at the luchador.
Oh, that's right. You got.
They kicked me out of the Napa Valley.
Yeah. No, they didn't think that was funny.
But it's a luchador. You're supposed to throw tortillas at the luchadors when they're wrestling.
But I think they were raw tortillas, and they took offense to that.
They're not supposed to be crunchy, because then they'll get on it. I think it's when I smacked the dude on the keister with the big handful of tortillas is when trouble. But it was fun. That was a fun day. There was like thousands of tortillas being thrown at these guys.
Yes.
I did think I was going to get my butt kicked that day, though, because those guys were big. So let's start off at the beginning, because you grew up in New York, and now you're in Louisville, Kentucky, the home of the baseball bat and the Kentucky Derby. So, how did that happen? Like, and getting into the kitchen and really.
Oh man, that's a long story.
That's okay.
This is what we're here for. It's a podcast. So I grew up in Brooklyn, and I worked just restaurant jobs my whole life. So here's a funny story, and you're not gonna like this. As you know, my first job was in a restaurant ever.
What?
I was 15 years old, and my first job was a busboy at a restaurant inside Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in Midtown Manhattan.
Really?
And yeah, that was my first job. And I applied for a job, and the guy was like, you have to, back then the laws were different. Like, you have to serve alcohol, so you have to be 16. And I was like, all right. And then he called me the next day, which was a Friday. And back then I was, living at home. My mom's like, some dude's calling you, and we had the phone that was like connected with the wire. And I was like, hey, and he goes, the other busboy never showed up. If you can be here in 15 minutes, I'll lie on your application. You got the job. So like I ran and ran and ran, and they got, as much as we all hate Trump, he gave me my first job. Well, he didn't, but that was my first job in the restaurant ever. Was at a fine dining restaurant inside the Trump Tower, which is just a weird, ironic twist of life. But yeah, so I work side. You grow up in New York. Like every summer, I just work in restaurants and as a cook. But crappy restaurants. It's like delis and stuff. And then I became a cook. I opened my first restaurant in New York City when I was 25, down in what they now call Nolita, and it was called Clay, and it was like a weird ass backwards Asian restaurant. And then 9/11 happened, and my restaurant was like a 15-minute walk from the towers. And 9/11 happened, and obviously just decimated everything, and I had friends die, and it was really hard, and I was like, I got to get out of New York. Also, I had a drinking problem back then because I was 25 and I owned a restaurant, and I don't know if I've totally eradicated the drinking problem, but it's gotten a lot better. And so I go, I got to get out of here, and I just didn't know where to go from New York. And long story short, I wound up in Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby, and I had an amazing time, and it was like, it's beautiful, and the girls were all wearing beautiful dresses and hats, and there was bourbon. It was amazing. And the chef that I worked for was about to retire, and he goes, you should move here, and I'll give you my restaurant. And that restaurant's 610 Magnolia, which I still own today.
Are you?
And I said,
kidding me?
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And he goes, you're depressed. You need to leave New York. You should take over my restaurant. And if you don't take it over, I'm just going to shut the restaurant down and sell it as a parking lot. And I was like, anyway, it went for like 6 months. We went back and forth. And finally, I was so depressed. I was like, I got to leave New York. I'll come down for 6 months. No promises. And then I'm going to come back to New York and open my restaurant. And I went down there. And after 6 months, I was like, you know what? I kind of like it here. And the people are nice. And I don't get into a fight every day with a cab driver, and I'm not getting mugged. New York was very different. Like people don't understand. Like New York was very different 22 years ago when I left. I mean, like you actually, like, you can't get mugged in New York anymore. Like 22 years ago, like that was a common occurrence. Like getting mugged was not. It wasn't like like, oh my God, I got mugged, and they'd be like, yeah, and like what else happened?
I've heard stories of cooks going home on the train and waking up and their shoes were taken off because they would
my God.
They would cut their pockets open and steal the food out of their pockets on their jackets.
I've never been truly beaten up in my entire life, which is surprising because I have a wise ass mouth. But the one time I got my ass kicked was I was working at a diner, and this homeless guy came up and asked for a free glass of milk. And I said, I can't give it to you. I can give you water, but I can't give you milk. So he came around the counter, took off his prosthetic leg, and proceeded to beat me in the head with it. And this is a true story. And the only way I could get out of that situation was I grabbed his prosthetic leg, ran out the door, and chucked it across the street so that he had to run to get his prosthetic leg back, and then I locked the door. Like, that is a true story. And then I told my manager and everyone, they were like, yeah, so what do you want, an award? Like, it was not even, it didn't even faze them. They were like, so what? And I was like, okay. So anyway, so that's where I come from. That's the origin. So then, I go to Kentucky, and I don't know. So coming from that, and going to a place. I think I was like 29, bordering on 30, and I go to Kentucky, and people are like, "Do you want to come to my house for brunch?" Or like, I baked you a cake. Do you mind if I bring it in? Like I'm like, what are these? Who are these aliens that are so nice? And it's just like, they're so nice. Like people would randomly stop me in the street and be like, "Hi." And I'm like, "Do I know you?" They're like, "No." "Hi." And I'm like, "Oh shit." You just say hi to people randomly to be nice.
Yeah, that wasn't happening in New York back then.
No. So I was like I was like a starving person that just like got morsels of food, and I'm like, this is amazing. So anyway, but I still never thought I would stay this long. I was like, I'll stay a year or two. I like this place. Fatal mistake. I met my girlfriend there, who became my lovely wife Diane, who you know, and fell in love. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm staying. So 20 years later, here I am, still in freaking Louisville, Kentucky, which I love it. I love it. It's just such a weird thing, and listen, it doesn't pass me by that I'm a Korean American from Brooklyn, that's like cooking in Louisville, Kentucky, and I remember there was like, I don't know, it was like a couple of years ago, and there was this like international thing, and every state had to send someone. I don't know, it was some like food fair, right? And they go, the governor of Kentucky calls me and goes, "We want to send you on this thing, and you represent Kentucky." And I was like, "Sir, you realize I'm a Korean from Brooklyn." But he was like, "Yeah, but you embody the spirit of," and that's what. Listen, there's a lot of people from my childhood in New York and from the people I know in DC, and they're like, "You live in Kentucky? Must be so racist." And I'm like, you know what? The governor of Kentucky called me to send me on this thing where I had to represent Kentucky. And he said, "You embody the spirit of Kentucky more than anyone that we know. And we love you." And like, it's a good place, and it's got its problems like every other place, but it's a good place. And the one thing I'll say is like, once I embraced Kentucky, it was like, I mean, our restaurant 610 probably uses more local farmers than any restaurant, with the exception of maybe one or two, than the entire state. Like we completely embrace the farm culture, the purveyors, the land, the people, the history, the traditions. And what I realize is, once you do that, like, they don't care where you're from or what you look like. They're just like, "We love you." Like, you buy more country ham from us than anyone. Like, and that's all I've done for the last 20 years is, come to New York or San Francisco or wherever and go, "You gotta try these Kentucky grits. You gotta try this Kentucky ham. You gotta try this sorghum from Kentucky. You gotta try this caviar from Kentucky." And I truly mean it. Like, it's an agricultural paradise out there, and these farmers, they're not just farmers. They're my friends. Like, I know them. I know their daughters. I know I know where their kids go to college. Like, they're just friends, that
Well,
happen to make food that I buy from.
it's such an interesting, thing, because the first time we met was when I came down to cook the Kentucky Derby, and I came to.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The first time I ever came down. It was Jeremy and I, and we came
Mhm.
and we ate at 610. And I've been down now a couple times. I'd say like
Yeah.
three, four times. And every time I come back, you're showing me these things, like, the first time we ate at 610, and the second time we ate at 610, and then there's the garden right next door. And there's so many cool things that you're doing. You're aging soy sauce in whiskey barrels. You really, all these things, I just come home and I'm like, got a notebook full of like, okay, I got to find this product. How do I get this here? And can I get these hams? And it was such an eye opener for me. I mean, yeah, I'd never been to a horse race. I'd never experienced a lot of those traditional Southern dishes. But then what you've done with them and the farms that you're working with. And, I remember the lamb that you
Hmm.
were serving me, which was really, really beautiful. It was just a real big eye opener. And then to have some things that are so traditional for Korean cuisine to be there naturally, right? It's just like part of the growing system there. And what you've been able to do and the food and how you've twisted and mixed them together, but it's so symbiotic. It doesn't feel off kilter and
Yeah.
and
And I
that's
hope so. Like, I hope so. Like, I don't, people use the word fusion all the time, right? And we grew up in that age where, like,
yep.
when wasabi mashed potato was hot. Do you remember when every menu had wasabi mashed potatoes on
I
it?
try not to remember those days. Or beet. How about the beet hay, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And you have this big pile of raw beet hay with a green wasabi mashed potatoes, and then it was usually
It
like a
was
fucking
it,
tenderloin and some soy
it
sauce.
was hot. It
It was
was hot. It was hot.
gross. Let's
But
be
I
honest.
try. I like. I hate the word fusion, right? Because like, to me, everything's fusion,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed.
Like you know, fucking French cuisine is a fusion of Mediterranean cultures and German cultures and, like, Latin cultures. Like, it's all a fusion. Um,
I mean, look at
but
Vietnamese food, right? The Vietnam French and
Vietnamese is
Vietnamese food.
French and well, even traditional Vietnamese food before French is like, it's Chinese mixed with Indonesia mixed with India. Like, that's all a fusion. Like, I hate when people are like, oh, that's fusion cuisine. I'm like, show me like, traditional Southern food is African ingredients with European traditions with American Indian agriculture. That's a fusion. Like, everything's a fusion. And so when all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're cooking fusion food. I'm like, stop it. Like, we're all cooking fusion. So I hate that word.
That's
But also, yeah.
That's a really, really good point, because I think so many people automatically go to, because, and I hate to say this, but it's done, and they point that term mostly at Asian cuisine.
Yeah, because it's racist. At some point, it's like, oh yeah, because French and Vietnamese, like, it's a fusion because they don't naturally go together. And I'm like, I don't know.
Says
The
who?
French colonized the Vietnamese, and French traditions in Vietnam has been there for a long time. So to many Vietnamese people that I know, the French influence, they were born with it. Their entire lives they've lived with the French influence. So, like, is it fusion or is it just culture?
I mean, you could talk about India and the English, Singapore
Yeah.
and the English,
So, like,
everywhere.
I mean, you talk about it just in, like, the Vietnamese have been in Texas for so long now
Yep.
that I know, on the coast of Texas, from Houston all the way down to Galveston, I know good old boy rednecks who have never been to Vietnam that know more about Vietnamese food than like my chefs do. Because they've just grown up with it from the time they were kids eating it. And it wasn't foreign food to them. It's just food. Because twice a week you go to the Vietnamese restaurant. It's just, it's what you do.
I mean,
And so
the dish of Houston is pho.
yeah, no, yeah. And Cajun shrimp, right? It's like, you can't get away from it. And that's part of what Buttermilk Graffiti is kind of about. It's like, we live in this world. It's like, America is a big, messy, fucked up soup with way too many ingredients in it, right? And we shake it up and we stir it up, and sometimes it tastes great, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's complex. Well, it's very complex, and sometimes it's not very nice, and sometimes it's really fucking generous and stuff. But that's, we take the good and the bad. That's the luxury that we have in America. So we're such a melting pot, so many different cuisines, so many different, and I use, white clam pizza from Connecticut. Like,
Of course I
I'm
do.
like,
I'm a Rhode Islander, man. I went to.
oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, born and raised.
I did. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I did know that. So, and I would say, like, an Italian person could not have come up with white clam pizza. A New Englander could not have come up with white clam. It took an Italian person to have a pizza joint with a New England person go, hey, why don't you put some fucking white clams on that? And then someone goes, all right, well, it's not, we don't do it in Italy. Well, we don't put yeasted pizza dough on clams in New England tradition, but you come together, you do it. And that's when American food, to me, is at its best. When you take things that shouldn't go together and you push it together, and somehow you find it, and sometimes it's awful, right? It's sometimes horrible, but sometimes when it works,
that's the wasabi mashed potatoes.
Like the wasabi mashed potatoes, right? That's the bad, that's the awful end of the, but when it works, you get white clam pizza, and it's the most delicious thing in the world, and it is such an iconic American thing now, right?
Oh yeah,
but it wasn't once. It wasn't, and people, and when it first came out, people were like, "Yo, you can't do that." Like people didn't like it in the beginning, right? So like every tradition was once an innovation, you know, and anything that we think of as traditional now was once something that people were like, "No, you can't do that," you know. And it's like when Roy Choi did the fucking bulgogi taco, you know. My parents were like, "Oh, fuck that guy, fuck that Korean, he's ruining our culture." I'm like, it's not. It's just a. It's a like.
It's beef.
It's not that offensive, you know. And also, it's pretty damn good.
That was delicious. I remember the first time having that being. I was like, yeah. God, man, like you kind of.
Why didn't I think of that? Right?
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that?
I lived on. Was I living under a rock? Like.
Yeah. But you see, but my parents who came from that, you know, traditional, they were like, that's insulting. Right? And I'm like, to you, not to me, right? So when we talk about like, and I talk about this a lot when I talk about the book Buttermilk Graffiti, they talk about culinary appropriation. I go, I don't know. What does that mean? Because we always fuse things together. We always borrow traditions. I don't cook Mexican food, but I go to Mexico and I'm like, whoa, what did that lady just do?
Yeah.
I'm stealing that. Now, I'm not going to steal it exactly the way she did, but I'm like, whoa, I just saw her do something, you know, I'm like, I'm going to take, that's what we do as creative people, as artists, as chefs. You know, listen, man, I can't tell you how many times I've been in your restaurant and you went to the bathroom. I'm like, yo, give me that recipe. The chef's done. Give me, what give me that. Tell me what that is. And your sous chefs are like, I don't know. I'm like, give me the fucking recipe.
I can see them being like, I don't know. He's going to get, which I would give you whatever the fuck you want. No, but see, I think that's a really, really, really important thing because as chefs, we go to other places. We learn their technique, their flavors. I mean, perfect example, go to Japan and watch them butcher fish. Mm-hmm. Watch them serve sashimi, which is, for me, I learned how to break down fish in a different method. I learned the different cuts in different fish, and then I could serve them as crudo in different ways. So when you're eating the fish, you're getting different cuts with different flavor profiles, which I wouldn't have understood unless I went there and watched them. And I don't feel that I'm culturally appropriating. I feel like I'm learning a technique to
and I will say,
the customer.
You know, so I'll give you an example of cultural appropriation, right? Was there was a guy from Chicago that tried to open a chain of poke restaurants, and he actually tried to trademark the word poke, so that people in Hawaii who have had poke restaurants for generations, or like, you know, for like 30 years, would now have to pay this guy money to use the word poke in their restaurant,
That's
even though it's Hawaii.
Fucking wrong.
But that's appropriation. That's pure evil that should be called out. You know, it's an unpopular opinion, but when someone opens a food truck and decides to cook the cuisine of another culture, I actually want people to do more of that. I want people to do more of that because it means, as long as you're doing it out of respect and a love for the culture, you know, as long as you're doing it with you know, a passion, like that's how we learn. And honestly, that's how we get to a better place where we all share our cuisines. And we like any white chef that comes up to me and goes, will you teach me kimchi? I'm like, yes, I want you to put kimchi on your menu because it just makes kimchi more popular. And maybe your kimchi is not traditional. I don't care if you're doing it, but as long as you're being respectful about it and you're doing it in a way that is, you're not going to put it next to a mound of wasabi mashed potatoes. I'm okay with that. Like, I want people to explore more Korean food and ways that as Americanized I am, there's some.
And I lost you. Oh, he just hung up. There you are. You just finished. The last thing you did was, and the most Americanized, and then you froze. Just
no. So like, I'm American, right? But even with me, there's still some things. There's some roadblocks in my mind mentally about Korean food. But I'm like, oh, you can't do that with Korean food, right? And because I'm still, even though I'm American, and then sometimes it takes a chef from outside of Korea to go, but why not? And then you go, oh yeah, you're right. Why not?
Okay. Speaking of Korean food, I was just in Hawaii for our anniversary. We had this dish at a restaurant in Hawaii that they called ice noodles.
Yeah. I saw that. That's naengmyeon.
It was so good because it was so hot out.
Yeah.
Every texture.
It's called bibimbap naengmyeon. It's my favorite thing in Korean.
It is.
It's my favorite thing. Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself as I'm sitting there, and let's talk about the thought process, right? So I'm sitting there tasting this, and I'm saying to myself, wow, this would be really cool if I did angel hair pasta.
Yeah.
And I made a really icy tomato, like tomato water with and made a broth with that, and you had it with like fresh tomatoes. And I'm thinking to myself, and of course Tatiana, being the smarter one of the two of us, looks at me and goes, you need to talk to Ed and ask for some permission for that shit, and you're gonna get
No, you don't.
I think it's fun. Like, that's where I was going with it. Because I think of the refreshing elements, and
that's what we do as chefs. Now, my mom would be like, Chris, no good. Chris, you a little bitch. Don't do that.
I would love to hear your mom say that. That would be so amazing.
But my mom's, and if you, so that's where we are now, right? Like, you and I where we are in our cuisine, like in our food, like, we're the older generation now, and we're becoming our parents, right? And so I have to keep an open mind now, because I see the younger people doing what they do, and I'm like, oh, you can't, oh, how can you? And I'm like, wait a second, you know what I mean? Because you do that, you're like, oh.
What, as Tatiana says it, she said this to me the other day. She's like, you are like the old grumpy man sitting on the porch saying, get off my fucking lawn, kid.
And we have to resist that temptation because it's so easy.
It's so easy to do.
It's so easy. It's so easy. I look at these. You want to hear my new pet peeve? Is these influencers, right? Who know nothing, and they put out this mediocre food, but that looks beautiful on Instagram, and they're getting cookbook deals, and they've got like millions of followers, and I'm like, ugh. But I had a revelation recently, and I'm like, that's just a next generation of food.
Yeah.
Like, as chefs, we paved this path so that home cooks could be the next wave of celebrities. And in some ways, like, I'm still bitter about it, but in some ways I'm like, that's beautiful. That's beautiful that these home cooks followed us and then said, I want to be like you. But guess what? I'm going to be smart and not have to go to cooking school, not slave in a kitchen for 20 years. I'm just going to be an influencer.
I'm going to stay at home, cook for my family, and not smell like a donkey after.
And still get a cookbook deal and still have more influence than you. I'm like, wow, you figured it out. Like, you figured it out. So like I can't hate on that, you know? Like I look at it and I go, I want to but then I'm like, that's kind of brilliant. It's kind of brilliant, you know? And so it's always that thing. And then who knows, the next generation of after that will be something completely new. And they'll be the ones going, oh, well, I had to work hard to be an influencer. You know what I mean? And like it'll just go on and on till
the cycle will go. I mean,
yeah,
we can genuinely say we remember when Twitter first came on board, and then it went from Twitter to Instagram. Everybody was like, okay, you have 140 characters and a picture, make it count. And we were like, okay, we're cavemen, we can do that. Ooh. You know, now it's like, oh shit, like you got the hashtags and the this and then this.
I don't know. Do you know what TikTok is? TikTok has somehow
it's totally taking over. I've seen a little bit of it.
Somehow during COVID, the world passed me by in 12 months. TikTok just went over my head. And now it's like, if you're not on TikTok, you're a goddamn dinosaur. And I'm like, what just happened?
Well, we don't dance. There's the starter, but you know, we don't do the dance.
No, but there's a woman on TikTok that makes spaghetti on her kitchen countertop. Have you seen this? She just boils like 10 pounds of spaghetti and just mixes it on her kitchen countertop. She's got like 5 million followers.
For mixing spaghetti on a countertop?
I'm like, what happened to the world that just like a speeding train just passed me? And I'm like, all right, this is what we're doing now. This is what we're doing now.
So did you sign up for TikTok is the question.
No, I don't. Apparently I'm just technologically not advanced.
I don't know. So, you have to learn, you know, the dance. Remember the one where you shook and you did you do that first?
And no, I listen, I'm going to be the dancing chef.
The dancing chef.
I'm going to be the dancing chef. Watch me on TikTok. You heard it here first.
You have 4 weeks to get your shit together. Oh my God.
But you know, but that's like the world travels so fast right now.
Yeah.
Travels so fast. And we live in this time where like, you know, and then I guarantee, but there's still this space for like, you know, old world chefs doing what they do and doing it slowly. You know, I will say during COVID, I was very, and you and I spoke a lot during COVID, and I was very like sad and dismayed, and restaurants were closing. And, you know, I wrote a whole essay about how it's the end of the independent restaurants. And I still, to some degree, think it's still true. And independent restaurants are still dropping like flies because everyone got their PPP and their grants and they kept them going for so long. But now, you know, bills are coming and back rent is due and all this stuff. And we're not out of the woods. But I don't know, there's a part of me that is always optimistic. And I feel like there's a part that's like, we're going to push through this and then whatever happens out the other end is going to be different. It's going to be weird. It's not going to be what I grew up with or what you grew up with, but it'll be fine. And we'll have to learn to adjust. And you know, at some point, the next generation is going to take over anyway. So let them define what it is for their generation. Like we're you know, at this point, I'm not going to be a TikTok influencer. Like I'm going to have to stay in my lane at some, you know, to some point. And like, I don't want to be the culinary equivalent of a 60-year-old man wearing skinny jeans and driving a convertible. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to.
Visual ed is priceless.
Yeah. I don't want to do that. So, at some point, you just stick to your lane.
So, in regards to sticking to your lane, I want to talk about the Lee Initiative. And,
yes.
You know, the Lee Initiative has morphed a couple times, and I think it's been really, especially during the pandemic, you were doing so much for so many, giving back to the restaurant community, people in need, and again, you then evolved. So we're talking about evolvement, right? And how we need to evolve, but not so far that we end up in skinny jeans driving Miatas. Would you drive a Miata? That's what you drive, convertible Miata.
Man. 20 years ago, I would have drove a Miata.
But I think what you were doing for me, what was going on. I mean, we talked a lot during the pandemic, and we were trying to get some things rolling here and there, and you were working with independent farmers and ranchers. You were feeding restaurant workers through other restaurants with the Lee Initiative, and now you've evolved again, and it's back to what it originally started as, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we have a whole program for young women chefs across America to give them like really, it's basically a 40-week program, and we pick young women in the early part of their career, and we give them on this mentorship training program, and we connect them with really successful female chefs across America, and they get, but it's not culinary training only. They get social media training, they get business training, they get a lecture on how to pitch an investor. They get how to like create a balanced mental health sort of work life balance. Like they get a free therapy session. Like it's all of it. And the idea for me is like, I don't know, it's hard because we're both men, and we both have had some kind of success in this business. And I remember, and this was years ago when we first started the Lee Initiative, we were doing the women's program, and it really started from the Me Too. Right? I was like, we should do something, but like I want to do something that's going to last a long time. And you and I both have a lot of friends who are female chefs, and people who we roll with, people who we went out with, and people, it's just like friends, but I never thought to ask them, like, hey, did you ever get harassed while you were, like it's not something I could. Now I remember doing that, I would call people and I'm like, hey, can I ask you a weird question? They're like, yeah. They're like, did you ever face, harassment while you were working? And every single one was like, oh yeah, here. And it was like the floodgates open. And they were like, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I was like, it really hurt me. I cried. Like it really hurt me because I know how hard it is to be a chef in this world. And I know how hard it is and how we both suffered to get to where we are. And it sucks. And then for them, on top of everything that we had to do, long hours, being yelled at, no food, having no money, on top of all of that, they had to get groped, which is something that I never did. I never got groped, right? So then I was like, wow, that's fucked up. Like you had it just as bad as us, and then this added layer that, and it's always in the back of my mind, but I never realized how much it was and how bad it was. And that's our fault. That's our blind, because I was so busy trying to succeed. I had blinders on. I was just like, I'm just going to go. So then you get to a point where I was like, I don't want the, like, it can't be all men in this business. It can't be, it's just, that's stupid. And especially, I don't think anyone's even done a story about this, but during COVID, a lot of female chefs closed their restaurants, more so than male chefs, like the proportion. And so like in Louisville, we used to have 4 female head chefs, and they closed, and now we only have 1. So in Louisville, a city of 1 million people with God knows how, like whatever, 5,000 restaurants or something like that. I don't know. There's 1 female head chef that I can name. 1, maybe 2. But that's not a percentage or a proportion that you can, that's fit. It just doesn't work. And so the program to us is like, it's not going to happen overnight. It may not happen in 2 years or 5 years, but it's going to happen where if we show these young women the path towards leadership, then they can visualize and they can see it, and they'll stick to it. And the program's 3 years old now, 4, but minus COVID. And already the people who graduated from the first semester, the first generation, their careers have already leapfrogged to where like they're actually head chefs now. They're running kitchens. One person is running the public school culinary division in Louisville. Like she's the head of it. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
What you can do when you give someone a vision and just a little bit of confidence. Because it's not talent. You know what I mean? Like it's not like they still will learn technique and they still have to work and learn, but it's not, I don't believe in God-given talent. Like maybe there's 1 in a million of us that has God-given talent, you know? But everything else is just learned, you know, like you like food and you just keep doing it. And so our thing is like, let's, you know, let women run this fucking industry for a while, you know, because the men fucked it up. So like, let them take over for a while and see what comes of it.
Who inspired all this? My great grandmother, my grandmother, you know, your mom. Like those are people that inspire us. And there's always been that saying, like the best chefs never leave their home kitchens because they don't want to put up with all the bullshit. Well, they were smarter.
Well, and I always think of this. You look at like older cookbooks, mostly written by women.
Yep.
You know, people, and before restaurants became like popular, like the old mom and pop restaurants, mostly run by women, right? So it was a woman-dominated industry for a while. And here's my theory: it became male-dominated when it became lucrative and it became competitive. And all of a sudden it was like, all right, oh, there's money to be made in this. Let's dominate. And it became food media and all that. And it's so, yeah. So it's like, people go like this, they go, oh, it's been male dominated. And I go, yeah, but it's not always been that way either, right? Like that's a relatively, it's a relatively new, like if you talk about the history of restaurants in America, like literally dating back to like, you know, the 1850s, it wasn't a male dominated industry then, right? So it's fairly recent that
it was not even considered a man's job to be a chef.
Exactly.
The first person who transferred that thought process was Chef Louis Sasmier from the bakery in Chicago, turned it into what was considered, I hate to say it this way, but they considered it servant work to a blue collar job. And then more men started to get involved with it because it was just traditionally a servant's job, and they would mostly, it was women running these kitchens. I mean, if you look at the Boston Cooking School, Fanny Farmer, all those books, what is it? The etiquette book has all the cooking recipes in it, all written by women. I mean, I've got stack of them.
I have 30, 40 vintage Southern cookbooks. Every single one written by women. Every single one. And so you know, men created restaurants, you know, the modern day restaurant as we know. But we got all of our food knowledge from traditions and books that were mostly from women. So it was one way, it was male dominated, and I do believe we have to get to a place where it's balanced. It's just balanced, you know. There's men in the industry, there's women in the industry, there's gay people in the industry, there's all colors and stripes in the industry. It has to be, you know. And here's the thing with people, we are getting there, right? I do believe the restaurant business is flexible, it's wonderful, it's full of good. We are getting there. And here, for people who criticize the restaurant industry, and we've had this conversation where they go, burn it to the ground, pump the brakes a little. As an industry, you know, compare us against, I don't know, the medical industry or the sports industry or the law industry.
The movie industry.
The movie industry. We are adjusting and doing good things faster, better, and more effectively than any other industry right now. But it's not going to happen overnight. And it takes programs, I think, like ours to go, yeah, we can do this. We can do this, and we're training people. It's not going to happen next year either. It's going to happen in 10 years when the seeds of what we plant now come to fruition. But 10 years is a short time to wait for something that's going to last generations. And so we're all trying. And so for people who want to bash the restaurant industry for our unfairness, fine. Yes, it deserves a lot of correction, but also realize like it's a very new, it's a industry still in its infancy, if you think about it, right? Like the first modern restaurant really didn't exist until like the 50s or something. You know, like what we think of as a restaurant is not even 100 years old. So like we're still learning, we're still getting there. And yeah, you mess up along the way, but this correction is good and it'll happen. And it's like, you know, it's we're getting it. Is what I think, and that's what gives me hope about this industry, about restaurants, about chefs. About people. Like we're all in it together, and so, you know, here's my diatribe about media, which you and I. The media tries to rip us apart, and it tries to be divisive, and it tries to pick sides. You are either for this or you are either for that. And I will tell you, and I have chefs who are of all stripes and colors, and people who are in the industry for, you know, people like Charlie Palmer, who's been in the industry forever, and you know, people like Nakia Rose, who graduated from the Lee Initiative, and she's 22, African American, and she's doing amazing. I know that my bond as a chef is stronger than any other bond that I have, right? Like, that guy's Korean. You should like him because he's Korean. I go, is he a chef? Nah, I'm not gonna like him. They're like to me, a chef bond is stronger than anything. And I don't really know. And also, I do surround myself with good people. I don't know any chef that goes, no, I want to be exclusionary. I don't want women in the industry. I don't want this in the industry because it's all about me. I don't know any chef that would say it. I really don't, you know, and so, yeah, we have to fix things, but I know in my heart that for the most part, I'm not going to generalize and say, but for the most part, chefs are good people. We love food. We love people. We love diversity because that's what we do. We go when I go on vacation, I go to the most diverse places in the world because I want to taste and try new things and experience new cultures. And so, and all my chef friends are like that, you know? And so there is hope for this industry. And in fact, there's a lot of hope for this industry, and it's going in the right direction. And I think it's great. I think it's great, and we'll get there. That's but the media, I think, has this, like, I don't want to say agenda, but there is this thing of like, okay, we're gonna pit these people against these people. And I don't believe that reflects the reality that I see when I hang out with chefs on a day-to-day basis. Be they Black, white, Puerto Rican, Jewish, Polish, Italian, French, Mexican, like, chefs are chefs. Chefs love to get together, talk food, eat, drink sometimes, and just have a good time. You know, and with all the things that we're doing, I hope we don't forget that part of it, you know, which is the sharing of ideas and recipes, the beauty of being in a room with people that you have nothing in common with except food, which
food I think is that thing that transcends all boundaries, race, religion, right? Politics. It's the one thing that can get everybody to sit down and have a civilized conversation. And yes, the conversations may get heated, but it changes the dynamic of the moment. And I think we as culinarians, hospitality people, have always wanted to see people smile. We want to make others happy. And that is the consistent bond that brings us all together.
Yes.
And I think that's really powerful. And I think a lot of folks don't understand that moment for us, because let's be honest, we all have a bit of ADD. We all have a bit of, right? That's an understatement. But we all love, there's that instant gratification of seeing that person take that first bite and have that taste memory. And you see that aha moment happen. That is so powerful as a cook, to see that moment happen, or for a waiter to make a suggestion and have that guest say back to them, you are right. This is incredible, right? Like that's putting that into this. It feels so good.
I always say, like, I'm not naive. Food is not going to change the world.
No.
But it's a damn good start. You know, it's a place where we can all agree on it, and I think if we focus, like we live in such a divisive society right now, right? And it's like, what do you believe in? Who'd you vote for? What did you vote? What do you do? What's your opinion on this topic? And if you don't vote, think the same way I do, well, F you. Like, can we for a moment focus on what we have in common, right? And then we can get to that. But let's focus on. Well, there's not a lot of things we have in common these days. Food's one of them. You know, you can disagree on all the politics you want. Most people agree fried chicken's pretty good.
Yep.
All right. And so you just focus on things, and I focus a lot of my, like, recently, like my media or my thing is like, let's focus on let's focus on love. Let's focus on what we agree on. Let's focus on, like, things that bring us together. And we can still argue about other things and we can still disagree. But it is hard to, it is easy to hate someone on Twitter. It is very hard to hate someone when you're at a dinner table having good food and a nice glass of wine, right? Even if you still disagree, it's hard to hate someone because food makes you feel good. And when you're feeling good, maybe you can find a better way to disagree, right? Maybe you can go, hey, I still disagree with you, but you know what? I can't hate you, because we both like the same things. And I think that's a good way to start, this human dialogue, which is like, I don't know, like we're all American. We all belong here. We all love this country. We all want we disagree on how this country should go, but we all agree that we want to be better, and so, and listen, there are crazy people out there. I'm talking the majority, right? There's always a minority of crazies out there. But the majority of people that I run into on a daily basis, and I run into a lot of them, they're all good people. They're all good people, And you know me, I'm like one of the most pessimistic people on the planet. Like I'm not exactly like warm and fuzzy, but it's weird.
Ellie's fuzzy because he's got his shirt on.
Yeah, but I have, especially, and the one thing that we did during COVID, we fed so many people, and I cannot tell. I cried more during COVID than I have in my entire life. And my career as a chef, like making fancy food, putting dots on things and whatever, like the power of food when a single mom of 3 comes up to you in a car and I give her a meal for 4 and she goes, well, I'm not going to eat this meal. I'll go hungry so that kids can eat this, and then I go, fuck it, you get 2 meals. And she starts crying. Like, that is more powerful and will be a more lasting memory for me than any review, any person, any famous person going, I love your food. Like, all that's good too. But I really learned what food meant during COVID, and that's the power of, like, we kind of dance in this world that's a little, rarefied. But you see what food is to people, and it's powerful. It's really powerful,
Food insecurity is a very, very serious subject that I think a lot of people don't know how to address. And when they're faced with it for the first time, not only personally, but also helping someone that's food insecure, it's a very life-changing experience. I mean, whether it's feeding, swords to plowshares, which, happens here. We work with that.
Yeah. We did this thing, where we would hand out free meals to people, and we did this all across the country. But in Louisville, we do this, and we found this amazing thing. So someone that picked up a free meal a week before would come back next week to volunteer, right? And people, because we needed help, and we were, it's during COVID. People were saying, and I'd say, do you want to help, like hand out meals and help us in the kitchen? And they go, I really don't, and all the time. And I go, please, just one day. And they would work one day. And I said, all we need you is for one day. And there, I can't tell you how many people would work one day, and then they go, I'm doing, and then they would work for 6 months. Like it would, and I was like, no, we don't need you anymore. Like, I'm not going to stop doing this. And it changes you. It just changes you, and it changed me. Like I will never not do this again for the rest of my career as long as I can, because it changes you. And like, listen, I'm still a chef and I still love making pretty food, but like, I don't know, there's just a different thing that now exists in the back of my head, right? And I think that's all enlightenment, right? Just in the same way, like I didn't realize how much women chefs struggle, and like now I can't unsee that, right? And so that's part of land. And you go, all right, well, if I can change some of that, why not? Why not? And so that's but it's not my like number one mission in life. I'm not gonna save the world, but it's something that is just now very important, and I want to continue doing.
And you do a fucking damn good job of it.
Thank you.
It's we talked a lot during the pandemic about what you were doing, and how amazing it was, and I was watching from afar and trying to help in any way I could, and it's kind of hard.
Yeah, you were going through your own thing though. That's the thing that we all went through so much, frustrating stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's,
to put it lightly.
What I think is really interesting, and something you mentioned was, that bond between chefs. I mean, you knew there's a group of us that kept on contact with each other. Everybody was checking in. There's a, and you know who you are out there, and those are the ones that are listening to this. And
there are other chefs who, like, I won't talk to you for 4 years, and then you talk to them, it's like nothing has happened. Nothing, like time just didn't pass. Like it just you pick up right where you left off, and that is a special bond. We're all a little bit on the spectrum, to say the least.
Some spectrum, another we're on.
Yeah,
but we all resonate with the same thing.
Yeah, and that's where we bond, and that's where and I also think that's also where we are very protective of each other in our industry and our career, and sometimes to a fault, right? Where we're like, I don't want influencers coming, but I'm like, yeah, like it's American cuisine, whatever you think that is, has come a long way in the last 20 years. I mean, like, really long. Like, people don't realize, I'm sure people realize, but like, there was a time not too long ago where restaurants were only fine dining for the very, very rich. And that was it. It was that, and then chain restaurants and fast food. And then here and there dotted was your mom and pop restaurants. But like, my restaurants wouldn't have existed. Your restaurants wouldn't have been. Jamie Bissonette's restaurants wouldn't have been. That, like, really good food that you can get at an relatively affordable price did not exist, right? That's relatively new. It's a luxury, man. It's a luxury. And the reason it exists is because a lot of chefs work their ass off to make it affordable. And so the restaurant industry has come so far in like the last 20, 25 years. And guess what? In 25 years from now, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be diverse. It's going to have every cuisine under the spectrum being treated with respect, being treated with a voice. It takes time. All these things take time, Yeah.
Well, think about the fact that sushi wasn't even something that most of the American populace would touch. Now it's almost on every block.
Every menu.
Right?
Every menu.
And you just keep on. Korean food was not a big topic at all.
That happened in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's exploded.
And you can go through the gamut. Like, I remember when Indian food was first introduced in a fine dining restaurant, and that was Floyd Cardo's at Tabla. right? Remember that? I remember that day. It was eye-opening for a lot.
And I'll say this right now. The next thing is going to be African food, and
Okay.
like Nigeria, I've been getting into like the food is so delicious. It's so amazing, and again, it's like it's familiar, right? There's so, but it's also like deeply unique, and then like those things will have it. Everything will have its day, and it's great. Again, there was a time not too long ago when if you went to if you wanted to celebrate and go to a nice restaurant, it was French food. That was it. That was it. That was your only choice. Even
Well,
Italian food wasn't considered high end.
Italian
Right?
American food was like the VFW hall at that point.
Yeah. So I mean, and I grew up in New York City, and as a teenager, I'm gonna date myself. This is why. You look up the top 10 fine dining restaurants in New York City in the 80s, it was every single one was French food.
Lutèce,
Lutèce, Grenouille, Jean George's old, it was all French food. It was all French food. Now, it's not. And there's room for more and more and more, and it's great. It's great. It's wonderful what's happening, and it will keep getting better, So it's I love it. I love what's happening. It's a rough period, but as long as we stay focused on the positive, I think things will proceed.
We'll weather the storm.
Yeah. Or else you and I will just both go to the Caribbean and open up a chicken shack.
I'll do a conch salad, conch fritters all day. Right?
I do a consulting deal in Antigua. And in Antigua, there's sea urchin all over the island. But no one, they're hard to harvest, and no one eats it. None of the locals eat it. But the tourists come and they're like, oh my God, there's sea urchin? So I had this idea, like, I'm just going to buy a little shed. I'm going to dive for sea urchin in the morning. Crack them open, $20 a sea urchin. I carve it for you and scoop it out and feed you. $20 a sea urchin. I will clean house. I'll open 4 days a week. And that's my retirement plan.
Not bad. I like that. It's like fun.
You can come join me and do conch, and we'll just kill it.
Yeah, we'll be neighbors. Conch salad, conch salad, conch fritters. Next door, you get your sea urchin, and then we're good to go.
It's a good retirement plan. It's a good retirement.
That's perfect. So I've capitalized a lot of your time, and I really appreciate it. We're gonna do this little quick fire thing that I did, because I know quick fire. You were really good at them.
So I'm just gonna say, me, like I'm the opposite of quick fire. Like I will get slower.
I know.
I'm like, huh? All right.
What? So it's straight up, no wrong answers. Okay.
All right.
Red or white wine?
Used to be red wine, but now it's white wine.
Okay.
And I would say the correct answer is brown wine, which is bourbon.
Brown wine. Hamburger, hot dog?
Hamburger. I hate hot dogs. I'm not.
Ketchup, mustard?
It's close. It depends. Ketchup. But mustards, it depends. Ketchup.
French fry, onion ring?
Onion. Onion ring.
I'm an onion ring guy too. Even though everybody loves French fries. Let's not lie. Sushi, excuse me, nigiri or sashimi?
It depends.
Those are undergarments for adults, dude. Depends. You got to pick one or the other.
Yeah. I gotta say nigiri because I gotta say nigiri because if I do sashimi, I end up paying $6,000 for a meal, and I'm not full. At least the rice is like a foundation.
It's like it takes up some real estate.
it's the free bread, and it's it's the same thing. Like you got to eat a bowl of rice, or else I can't live without starch.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh man. Okay, sea urchin or caviar?
Oh, sea urchin. By far. by far. By far. You want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
So my daughter, I hope I'm not going to offend any PETA people, but like, my daughter's an animal lover. So we're in Antigua and we're on the beach, and literally you go out and I just grab some sea urchin off the beach. And, like the spines move and it's really cool. And my daughter's like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. And I start hitting it with a rock. And she goes, Dad, you're killing an animal. And I go, wait. First of all, sea urchin kills coral. It's one of the main killers of coral. So they're not good to begin with. And secondly, and I scoop it out and I go, take a taste. She eats it. She goes, Dad, can we go kill more sea urchin?
I love it.
So now
he's saving the coral.
She's like a sea urchin serial killer. Like she's a sea urchin mass murderer. Like and now she thinks it's every beach. So like we'll be on like North Carolina. She's like, can we get some sea urchin? I'm like, there's no sea urchin in North Carolina. We're in Coney Island. They're like, can we get sea urchin? Like, no, this is not.
Even if you could, you wouldn't want it.
You wouldn't want to eat it. So it's pretty hilarious. But yeah, I feel terrible because I've turned her into this like incredible carnivore. She was on the path to vegetarianism, and I just stopped it. So,
kids ebb and flow with their food choices. Things. Like my son when he was little, we taught him that McDonald's had poop in it, so whenever he would see so he didn't eat McDonald's for years. Now he's 6.
And that's probably not even a lie, to be honest.
No, it's not a lie. I mean, there's a certain amount of, but the funniest part. Watch, I'm going to get a cease and desist.
My goal was to get you in trouble.
I know. It always is. I mean, we are definitely good at getting each other in trouble. But now, he eats McDonald's and all that.
Yeah.
But as a kid, he didn't. And, but he ate oysters for a while, then stopped. He eats sardines. He'll eat tuna heart.
No, my daughter's the same way. She's on a French fry kick. Like, it kills him. She'll eat French fries for this dinner. I'm like, it kills him.
I'm just going to make a poutine, put all sorts of stuff all over it. That she's forcing.
No, she won't.
She won't do it. She just wants the fries.
Her dinner is potato and salt and ketchup. Like, that's her dinner. It kills me. I don't know what to do. I need parenting advice. Anyone. I need parenting.
Make her do no thank you bites. That's what we do. That's what we did when Easton was little. We had to do a one no thank you bite. So he'd have to take a bite of it, and he couldn't.
Yeah.
It was like, give me a descriptor of why you like it or why you don't like it, and it can't be the word yucky or gross. It has to be like too salty, too sour, blah blah blah. And it worked. He ended up finding a lot of shit he likes.
Oh, that's good. All right, I'll try that.
It works. I mean, just say one no thank you bite, and we'll let it go. And a lot of times he ended up liking it, and then sometimes it was the.
Yeah. I have a feeling she's still just throw it in my face.
You got to get somebody else to get involved, because the more that you push it, it's.
I know.
Chef Dad is making me eat.
I know. Believe me.
The Chef Dad, he's so weird. All right, pasta, noodles.
I'm Asian. Noodles.
Dumplings, ravioli.
Dumplings. 1,000%. 1,000%.
What?
I can't even know.
Burrito, falafel.
Say again?
Burrito, falafel.
Burrito. A bulgogi burrito.
Bulgogi burrito, I love it. So, everybody, Ed, first off, thank you for taking time. This is awesome. I love catching up with you. We need to do this more often. When are we going to cook together?
You tell me. I'm just treading water right now.
Trust me. If anybody gets
it, I had to bartend for 4 days in a row when I reopened the whiskey bar.
Are you good at it?
No, it was terrible. I had people come up to me and go, "Do you have a cocktail menu?" And my response was, but we are a whiskey bar. And I said, "I have whiskey, ice, and soda. And I will make you a drink with any combination of the three." And that's it.
What was the response?
Some were fun. One lady complained to the manager. She said, "Your bartender is really rude." I was like, but he's also the owner.
You weren't rude. You were honest. You were like, these.
I was honest. Maybe I said in a slightly surly way, but yes, I was honest. I don't know how to make cocktails, but we were so shorthanded. Like I literally had to bartend 4 nights. So we're slightly out of the woods, but there's still like, emergencies every day. Like,
It's everybody across the country right now. And I think there's a really good topic to end on. For folks that are going out to restaurants, please be kind to the staff. There is an extreme shortage of hospitality staff throughout the US. They are doing their best to make you be happy. Please come in and be kind to them because they're working their butts off and it's really hard on them. Their goal is to make you smile and be happy. So please take that into account. They're doing the best they can. Okay, it's really, really important. And for those of you folks who want to find out more about Ed and the Lee Initiative, you can help out there. Ed, you want to give them that website? And I'm also going to put a link at the end of this to the Lee Initiative and where to follow Ed on Instagram to see all his shenanigans.
Yes, my Lee Initiative is www.leeinitiative.org.
And folks, it's a really, really great organization. And if you have that time, please take a look, make a donation. You can watch all these young ladies, thrive through the program, and they definitely show where these young ladies are in the program. So it really is an awesome thing that Ed's doing here, and the whole crew that.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
And Ed, thank you. I appreciate your time. And
no, anytime.
Look forward to hanging out soon.
Yes, definitely, man. Thank you. And just final word, like, super value your friendship and all the conversations we had through COVID. It's in these times you find who your friends are. So really good to drink.
Thanks, man. It means a lot. I appreciate it. You too.
Take care, man.
You too.